Welcome back to Filmmaster Reviews. I'm Adam J. For future content on this channel, please hit that like button and that subscribe button. Well, folks, today I'm going to do something I swore to myself I would never do. I'm going to rank the Star Wars movies. Yep. I've gotten so many requests over the years to rank them, and I have always refused. And the reason why I've always refused can pretty much be summed up in the following sentence. No one hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. For the better part of 2 decades, the Star Wars fandom has been pretty damn toxic, and I'm sorry, I'm not wrong in saying that. They have made Star Wars not fun to talk about anymore. Forget what The Last Jedi lambasters did to Kelly Marie Tran. That's the least of it. People crapped on Ahmed Best so much that he almost killed himself. People crapped on Hayden Christensen so much that he only recently came back into the Star Wars fold. People crapped on Jake Lloyd for his entire childhood, and he ended up in a damn psych ward over it. People crapped on George fucking Lucas so much that he sold the damn franchise to Disney and left the human embodiment of feminist propaganda in charge of it. And, look, I'm ashamed to say, I'm not innocent in this. I crapped on Ahmed Best a lot back in the day, as well as Hayden Christensen and Jake Lloyd. It's okay to dislike a character, but it's unacceptable to shit on an actor or actress for playing that character. They were hired to do a job, and did the job they were asked to do. It wasn't until I saw a video released by Mark Hamill that I realized what a goddamn douche I had been.
I couldn't believe some of the things they wrote about the prequels, you know? I mean, but really, beyond I didn't like it. You ruined my childhood, and I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do. Believe me, I understand clunky dialogue. So I almost got hornswoggled in that documentary where they weren't calling it The People versus George Lucas at the time, but I could tell from the questions they were asking me, it was an open invitation to trash George. And I have issues with George, but I love that man. I would never, you know, and I don't talk outside the family.
Not gonna lie, I regret it a lot. I regret all the crap I said, especially now since I look back and realize that those things I complained about really weren't bad. I was a dumb kid going along with the crowd instead of forming my own honest opinion. It wasn't until I stopped trying to be liked and just said, screw it, I'm entitled to like what I fucking like, to hell with everyone else, that I finally woke up to it all. All that being said, the toxic fandom element is really why I didn't want to rank these films. I mean, it just felt like it would be a total loss to me. I could give you what you asked for, which is this list, but I guarantee it's not going to be what you want to see. My ranking has way too many hot takes to count. I'm not new to hot takes, but for Star Wars, when it comes to fans, God help you if you, for example, have a sequel trilogy film in the top 5. Rank an original trilogy film lower than any of the prequels. Or don't declare The Empire Strikes Back as your #1 favorite Star Wars film. If Empire is not #1, you must have quit! You are wrong! And a Disney shill! And a fake Star Wars fan! And you make my pee-pee hurt! And God, I'm so tired of hearing that shit. Oh, and by the way, all the examples I just mentioned are true of the following list. Anyway, but today, screw it. I'm not gonna let the trolls get to me with this one, or run my damn life, or try to tell me how I should fucking enjoy Star Wars. You know what, folks? If you like The Phantom Menace, that's fine. If you hate The Phantom Menace, that's fine too. Like what you fucking like. You can do that. Trust me, the time has finally come, folks. Ahsoka is right around the corner, and I have found myself in a massive Star Wars mood. And for those wondering, no, I will not be discussing the Clone Wars movie. That is not a movie. It was 3 episodes of a fucking animated pilot strung together. So not counting it here. Here is my ranking of all 11 live-action Star Wars films. Guys, I don't care how bad the Book of Boba Fett was. I don't care how underwhelming the 3rd season of Mandalorian was. I don't care how hated Reva is to some people. I don't care how much you complain about Jar Jar Binks. No matter how bad something in Star Wars gets or has gotten, it cannot get here. The Rise of Skywalker was a level of horrendous that I cannot fit in my head. I saw this film 4 times in theaters. 3 of them were completely against my will. Each time with a different person. And you'd think it might get better for me after a few times. But no, it got worse each time. I still remember my dad and I leaving the theater on my third viewing, and the guy behind us stating, and I quote, "Fuck, dude, I need to go watch an Ewok movie to get the taste of that shit out of my mouth." I laughed in complete agreement. In fact, you want to hear a good story about this, like a good theater story? In the scene where Rey and Kylo kiss at the end, one person in the middle of the goddamn theater literally stood up and went, "Why?" And the entire theater erupted with laughter. That is how bad this shit got. The entire plot is a string of fetch quests strung together by the thinnest narrative imaginable. The outcomes for the characters were beyond underwhelming. It was pitiful. Palpatine being alive not only makes zero sense, and they never bother explaining it either, so you can't tell me I'm wrong. It completely dicks over Anakin's entire arc in the original trilogy. It isn't worth a lick of shit now. Oh, I guess he didn't bring balance to the Force after all. What bullshit. The action scenes aren't creative. The story is needlessly convoluted. It introduces about 3 movies worth of fucking subplots, and it absolutely dicks over everything that The Last Jedi established. Rey being a nobody? Gone. Now she's a Palpatine, because why not? Rose and Finn's potential relationship? Gone. Rose is in maybe 2 scenes of the whole film, but it's okay, because we fixed it and gave the black guy a black girlfriend who we just railroaded in halfway through for no reason. Did you really think we'd do anything else? Well, you know what we're doing. We're fucking Disney. Fuck you. Kylo being this big bad of this new series of films? Guess again! He takes a backseat to Palpatine, becomes his bitch for no reason at all, and then turns good at the end because, reasons. Also, can someone please explain to me how half the Death Star is still intact? Did they not see Return of the Jedi? Yeah, tell me how that's leaving any debris on a planet somewhere. Also, how does an ancient Sith dagger perfectly match up with the location of the Death Star like it's the goddamn Goonies or some shit? Are the damn Sith omniscient now? Oh, and by the way, I love how Rey holds the dagger and says, "Horrible things have been done with this." Meanwhile, the entire trilogy, she's been rocking the fucking Youngling Slayer 5000. Like, seriously? Come on! And please tell me how a desert nomad is able to perfectly maneuver a boat through a goddamn hurricane. And don't even get me started on Rey calling herself a Skywalker. You're not a Skywalker! You're fucking lies! This film was so awful, it actually made me look back in the last 2 films and kind of reevaluate them. Okay, more on that later, because I'm going to go into a lot more detail about why I hate this movie on a deeply personal level. Who out there said to themselves, "We want a film about a young Han Solo," when Harrison Ford obviously can't play the character anymore? Don't get me wrong, there's a lot involving Han Solo's backstory in the expanded universe that would make for an awesome flick. And to be fair, this does pull from some of it. Han being an orphan, him joining the Imperial Army, etc. And also, to be fair, there is some stuff to like here. Alden Ehrenreich is no Harrison Ford, but he does fine with what he's given. Donald Glover was a perfect Lando Calrissian. I didn't even see Donald Glover in that performance. I just saw a young Lando. You could swear to God you were looking at Billy D. Williams at 20. Some of the action scenes are alright. There's a pretty cool Darth Maul cameo. Woody Harrelson is awesome in anything. There is some stuff to like here, but here's the thing. Do you remember X-Men Origins Wolverine? Remember how the opening of that film just kind of skimmed through several different events in Wolverine's life when any one of them would have made for a decent movie on their own? Solo does the exact same thing. We go from Han being an orphan slave, to him losing his woman, to him being in the Imperial Army for 3 years, to him deserting the army, to him joining a group of thieves, to him meeting Lando, to him making the Kessel Run, to his mentor betraying him, to Darth Maul being the mastermind behind Crimson Dawn. Do you get my point? Any one of these things could have been developed to make a solid film. Having them all here in one film makes Han's endeavors not only feel less interesting, it makes the film feel like a confused mess. And don't even get me started on Phoebe Waller-Bridge's droid character, whose name I never bothered to remember. The second she showed up, I was pretty much done. And when she died, I literally cheered in the theater. The annoyance of this character cannot go unnoticed. Solo isn't an awful movie by any stretch, but it's not a film that I can call good with a straight face, either. Oh yeah, I told you there'd be hot takes. You think I was joking? Look, is The Force Awakens terrible? No. It's not even really a bad movie. It's perfectly serviceable. But that's all it is. It's serviceable. The Force Awakens is the very definition of bare minimum storytelling. The Force Awakens took the plot for A New Hope, changed very little, and just told the same plot again with mostly new characters. I get that J.J. Abrams and Disney chose to play it safe with this one, but when you do that, you are demeaning the very genre your film is set in. Star Wars is science fantasy. Fantasy is a genre of creativity. Name one, just one, creative thing in this entire film. Name one thing this movie did that A New Hope, a film that it is shamelessly stealing from, didn't do better. I mean, why would I watch this over that film? Unless I'm binging these films in order, the obvious answer is, I wouldn't. Now, that doesn't make this film awful. It has good performances. I love Daisy Ridley and John Boyega's chemistry. BB-8 is hilarious. Poe is pretty cool, even though him surviving the crash in the beginning made no goddamn sense, and even J.J. Abrams has admitted as such. The action scenes are awesome. Han's death is hard-hitting, even if anyone with a brainstem saw it coming a mile away. I'll say this, though. I hated Kylo Ren in this movie. All I saw in this movie was a whiny little Darth Vader wannabe bitch throwing a temper tantrum every 5 minutes. Adam Driver's performance is fine, but the character is a goddamn joke, and didn't really get interesting until the next film, at least in my opinion. But Kylo isn't even the reason this is so low. The reason this film is so low is because it plays it so safe and does so little original that it has almost no rewatchability factor for me. The problem with The Force Awakens isn't that it's bad. It isn't. The problem with The Force Awakens is that out of all the Star Wars films, good or bad, it's the one that has left the least impact on me. Yep, and the hot takes just keep coming, don't they? Why would I rank this lower than any of the prequels? Here's why. Return of the Jedi is a structural mess. In fact, it has the exact same problem as the next film on this list, only worse. Here's what I mean. The first 45 minutes of this movie has nothing to do with the rest of it. Yes, I understand getting Han back was essential, but did we need to spend 45 minutes doing this? Especially for such a convoluted rescue plan? I mean, shit, why even go through this when one of you is a Jedi with a damn lightsaber? You made this so much more difficult than it needed to be. And don't get me wrong, Jabba looks awesome, and I love seeing Carrie Fisher in a gold bikini as much as the next guy, but my point still stands. The beginning of this film is completely inconsequential to the film's overall narrative. Jabba has nothing to do with the rest of the story, and, well, let's just be honest here, neither does Han, really. Even George Lucas admitted he couldn't really figure out what to do with him in this film, which is why he's just kind of there. You ever notice how he essentially does fuck all in this movie? Literally, all he does is shoot his blaster a couple times, shrug, and be jealous of Luke. That's it. The middle of the film, I'm pretty mixed on. Outside of maybe the speeder bike chase, it's kind of boring. I like the Ewoks, but the film has to pretty much come to a standstill just for them to be introduced to the audience. The climax and the ending of the film are awesome. That's what saves it. The Battle of Endor, the assault on the new Death Star, Vader's redemption. In terms of visual and character payoff, it ends on a very satisfactory note. In terms of story, however, it just plays it safe. It's the ending of A New Hope again in terms of the final battle. That's all it feels like. So, what we have here is a useless, yet entertaining opening, a boring middle, and an awesome yet recycled ending. It's a movie with a ton of memorable moments that you won't soon forget, but overall, it's totally inconsistent and all over the place, and I can't put it any higher than this. The Phantom Menace is a film I used to hate. I mean, really despise. Looking back on why, the reasons for that were pretty dumb. Again, it was less about me having my own opinion and just adopting everyone else's like a tool. I'm not proud of it. Yes, there's a lot of politics, but it's important to foreshadow and set up how the Galactic Republic eventually falls. Yeah, Jar Jar can be annoying, but I'm sorry, he's no more annoying than C-3PO was. He's a comic relief character for kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. Since the release of Force Awakens, I've come to appreciate this film so much more. I appreciate how different it is, I appreciate how Lucas tried to push the limits of technology like he did with the original films, and I really appreciated the creative new worlds. Liam Neeson is awesome as Qui-Gon Jinn, Ewan McGregor would become legendary for his portrayal of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Duel of the Fates, to this day, is still my absolute favorite lightsaber duel. I cannot watch that sequence without getting goosebumps. John Williams' score in that scene was just on point. It is my favorite Star Wars tune. And honestly, I loved Padme Amidala in this movie. Even in the face of death, she doesn't care. She will fight for her people no matter the cost. That's a cool character. But as I said when I discussed Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace has an issue with structure. The middle section on Tatooine drags on just a bit too long and really could have been cut back for time. Hell, why didn't they just sell Anakin's pod to get the money they needed? Again, they made this so much more complicated than it needed to be. That being said, I'm more forgiving of this for two reasons. One, the pod race scene was a nice homage to Ben-Hur, featuring a slave racing for his freedom. That was really cool. Two, unlike Jabba the Hutt or Han Solo, Anakin is actually important to the rest of this story. He plays a pivotal role after he's freed from slavery. Hell, half the plot from there on in pretty much hinges on him. So while the Tatooine section goes on too long, I can't say it's pointless. The Phantom Menace is a mixed bag. It has pacing issues. It has moments that could have been cut for time. And it's not perfect, but that doesn't make it bad. Oh, the hot takes never end, and they go on and on, my friend. Attack of the Clones is a film I've always been in a small minority on. I have liked this film since I saw it in theaters. I still like it now, and I honestly feel the hate for this movie is completely overblown. Every time I hear people complain about this movie, they only ever use the same two things to crap on it: the CGI and the love story. In terms of CGI, it's not that bad, especially considering that it was the first film to ever be shot on digital. Yeah, some of the aliens, especially in that round table scene, look really rough. But is anyone really gonna tell me that arena scene wasn't awesome? Can you tell me with a straight face that the Battle of Geonosis wasn't entirely badass? The chase on Coruscant, the landscapes, the lightsaber duels? Come on, folks. Just because some shots look a bit rough doesn't mean all the CG was bad. I mean, come on, we're not talking about the fucking Flash movie here. Again, a completely overblown argument. As for the love story, I kind of agree. Yeah, it's a bit wooden at times, some of the lines feel a bit cringy, Anakin comes off as a creeper in a few scenes. Here's the thing though, when you look at the dialogue in the original trilogy, most of it, especially the dialogue between Han and Leia, was a callback to the old age of cinema. They talk like it's a film from the 1940s or 50s. With the prequels, George went back even further, adopting a more old-school Shakespearean type dialogue. So are we really gonna say that this is cringy?
I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me.
But this isn't.
Thus from my lips by thine my sin is purged.
And have my lips the sin that they have took?
Sin from my lips? O trespass sweetly urged, give me my sin again.
That doesn't seem fair.
As far as Anakin being creepy goes, it makes perfect sense that he would be. He's only known two women in his entire life at this point, Padme and his mother. He had to harbor a crush on Padme for 10 years while he was training the Jedi Temple with a shit ton of celibate monks. Seriously, you think Obi-Wan's giving this guy dating advice? It makes perfect sense that he would have no idea how to talk to women or flirt or express any personal feelings he may have. It makes sense that it would probably come across as a little creepy. So no, this doesn't bother me that much, and with all this put into context, it made me realize that despite what I used to think, Hayden Christensen really isn't that bad in this movie. People say he's whiny. Guys, Luke was a whiny little bitch in New Hope and Empire.
Oh, she's stationed to pick up some power converters. This R2 unit has a bad motivator, look! It just isn't fair.
Wait a minute, where'd she go? Bring her back. Play back the entire message.
But it's a whole nother year. But they're gonna kill her!
Oh, but Luke had a reason to be whiny. Anakin has more of a reason to be whiny. But I'll talk about that later in the video. That scene of Anakin finding his mother is such a heartbreaking moment. Hayden sells the hell out of it, and the outcome of it perfectly represents what Yoda told him in Phantom Menace.
Your thoughts dwell on your mother.
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What does that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Fear of his mother dying. Anger for the Sand People for taking her. Hatred for the Sand People for killing her. And what happens after that, folks? He suffers for having killed the Sand People. When he's relenting to Padme for what he did, people see it as him being a psycho when that isn't what the scene is doing at all. Yeah, he hates the Sand People for what they did, but if you actually look at him, actually listen to the way he's talking and the way his face is quivering, it becomes pretty damn clear he hates himself even more for what he did.
And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them!
I'm sorry, there's a lot more good to this performance than there is bad. Yes, some of the dialogue is wooden, but so was half the dialogue in the original trilogy, especially A New Hope. I just think it's crappy to give this film hell for something that the original trilogy did too. But even if you hate the love story, fine, fair enough. That is a very small part of the movie, guys. It's maybe 25 minutes of the whole thing. This movie brilliantly shows how Palpatine was able to gain power over the clone troopers, how he was able to play both sides of the war like a game of chess. Christopher Lee is awesome as Count Dooku. Obi-Wan gets a nice subplot tracking down Jango Fett. Jango Fett is a fucking badass, better than Boba in every way, don't even argue with me. The action features some of the coolest visuals in Star Wars, period. The Battle of Geonosis alone was worth the price of admission. Hell, I remember seeing this in theaters, and when Yoda pulled out the lightsaber for the first time, not only did everyone cheer, everyone gave a standing ovation. There really is a lot more to love about this movie than there is to dislike. Again, I can agree on a few points, but I'm sorry. Attack of the Clones is a Star Wars movie I will pop in any day and never be bored with. I truly wish others felt the same. Okay, from here on up, I'm just gonna say the rest of these are perfect 10 out of 10 movies for me. Look, when it comes to Rogue One, I honestly had no ambition to see it when it was announced. For one, I thought calling it a Star Wars story was really stupid, and I was completely against them not using the opening crawl or the iconic Star Wars theme. The changes just felt unnecessary to me. However, I went into the movie hoping for the best, and it instantly became one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I loved how this film had the balls to show that while the Empire may be evil, the Rebels aren't exactly squeaky clean either. Their hands can get just as dirty, and this is confirmed as early as 10 minutes in, when we see one of the main characters, Cassian Andor, murder a frightened informant who gave him information. Yeah, shit gets pretty dark in this film. I love how the aesthetic of the film feels like an actual war movie. They literally frame the whole climax to mimic the invasion of Normandy, with the soldiers storming the beach, which was exceptionally clever. The film ties in seamlessly to the original Star Wars film, explaining why the Death Star had such a major design flaw, and how the Rebels got their hands on the Death Star plans. The characters in Rogue One, as well as the actors playing them, were the film's highlight. Jyn Erso was a great character, and Felicity Jones was perfect in the role. Loved Diego Luna as Cassian Andor. He makes it very clear with this performance why he was able to get a spin-off series. Donnie Yen was exceptionally badass as the blind Force user Chirrut. That scene towards the end when he goes onto the battlefield with his staff, chanting, "I'm one with the Force is with me," is one of the film's many highlights. And for once, we got a comic relief in Star Wars who never came off as annoying in the form of K2SO, played by Alan Tudyk. This character is hilarious, and Tudyk, who's played good comic relief sidekick roles in the past, just owns it whenever he's on screen. He brings so much charm to the character, it's impossible not to enjoy him. His cynicism and realist attitude could cut a Buick in half. And I'm sorry, can we all just agree that this has the most badass Darth Vader moment in history? Jesus fuck, I felt like I needed a nap after that scene. It was that awesome. If I have any complaints with this movie, it's with Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn. Now, he's not a bad villain, and Mendelsohn's performance isn't bad at all. The villain himself just isn't that memorable. When you think of a great Star Wars villain, let's be honest here, the last person you're gonna think of is Orson Krennic. It also doesn't help that he's completely upstaged by Vader and Tarkin. Yeah, they got Tarkin in this movie through the use of motion capture technology. In my opinion, it looked pretty damn good. I don't get the hate for it. What I do get the hate for is the motion capture on Princess Leia. Especially in HD, it's very noticeable. But those minor gripes are small potatoes compared to the rest of the badassery in this movie. The action is spectacular, the heroes are great to have an adventure with, and the ending is both heartbreaking and hopeful. I fucking adored Rogue One. So, I just went through a massive string of hot takes, but let's take a break from that now, because I don't think I'm wrong in saying that most Star Wars fans, if not all of them, have the original film in their top 5. Star Wars A New Hope was absolutely iconic. It inspired an entire generation of fans and filmmakers. From George Lucas's groundbreaking level of filmmaking to the perfectly drawn and relatable heroes, the iconic villains, the sheer spectacle of the effects. I remember when the original trilogy was re-released in theaters in the 90s. My dad took me to all of them. Now, I had already seen A New Hope on VHS at home, but I'd never seen any of these films on the big screen before. Not only was seeing the opening crawl on the big screen an absolute sight to behold, the first shot of the ship being attacked made my jaw drop to the floor. I can only imagine what it was like for people seeing it for the very first time in theaters back in 1977. I'd kill to be one of those people. Yeah, Luke Skywalker can be whiny in the film, but regardless of all his bitching, he does prove himself capable and is instrumental in saving the day in the end. Mark Hamill's acting wasn't perfect, and even he's admitted that, but his character was very relatable, as someone who wants more for his life, and he did perfectly fine with what he was given. Harrison Ford as Han Solo, guys, what can I even say? Han Solo was the fucking Emperor of awesome in this movie and in Empire. He's the reluctant hero of the story who acts like he's only out for himself and Chewbacca's well-being, but in the end steps up and helps Luke blow up the Death Star. He's a smuggler with a heart of gold, and I've never met a single person who didn't love this character. The late Carrie Fisher, may she rest in peace, was also iconic as Princess Leia. Whereas most stories would have a princess looking for someone to save her, once Luke gets her out of the room, she turns into a badass and doesn't take anyone's shit. She just straight up takes charge, and it, especially for the time, was pretty damn cool to see. Alec Guinness, while not liking the role he was playing, still does everything in his power to realize Lucas's vision. Obi-Wan Kenobi was an instantly iconic character for his wisdom and the way he just walks up to the main bad of the trilogy with no fear whatsoever. And yes, while I do prefer Ewan McGregor's portrayal of the character, Alec Guinness still pulled in a solid performance that has been remembered and will continue to be remembered for years to come. Of course, you get Darth Vader's intro in here, but much like Luke, Vader didn't really become that interesting until the sequels that followed. Still, he fits his role here as the main bad guy pretty well, and the script does a good job foreshadowing things that would later happen with the character. Look, from the characters, to the effects, to Death Star 1, I can't think of anything to hate in this movie. Oh yes, the movie that most people put at number 1 is only my number 3 pick. Let me make this perfectly clear. The Empire Strikes Back is the perfect sequel, by which all other perfect sequels have been judged. The film is simply amazing. In this, we have exactly what the title says, the Empire striking back against the rebels in an attempt to wipe them out. Empire took a dark turn not only with its storytelling, but with its characters, and it was exactly what the series needed. And it's worth noting that when it was released, the film did not do well with critics. They found the changes to the lore, particularly Darth Vader being Luke's father, too ridiculous. They found Cloud City to be a pointless detour in the story. They found the darker tone inappropriate for kids, and they didn't like the characters being split up. That's actually kind of hilarious to think about now, considering these very things are what the movie is now praised for. And to my knowledge, that never happened again. I mean, I can't think of one Star Wars movie that pissed people off for any of those reasons. Not one. Anyway, the film introduced Lando Calrissian into the series, a character who is honestly every bit as cool as Han. Billy D. Williams is another one of those actors who is just awesome in anything, and Empire was no exception. Hell, he was good in The Rise of Skywalker, and I can't stand that garbage. The film also introduced Yoda to the series, it introduced Force Ghosts, it showed us a connection between Luke and Leia, which would have a massive payoff in the next film. Empire truly went for broke and changed things up for the better. Now, there is one thing about this movie that has always bugged me. To illustrate my point, let's just play the clips.
And sacrifice Han and Leia.
If you honor what they fight for, yes.
That boy is our last hope.
No. There is another.
Yeah, there is another. We find out in the next film that the other is Leia. So why did Yoda just tell Luke to let her die? Dude, the fuck? I'm sorry, I know it's a very small thing in the movie, but it's always baffled me to no end. So yeah, despite that one bout of dialogue that makes no logical sense, Empire is, once again, the perfect sequel. When it comes to the next two, I have been flip-flopping back and forth for so long. On one hand, we have the Star Wars movie I watched the most, and quite often. And then we have the Star Wars movie that had the biggest impact on me personally. I love them both equally for completely different reasons. This was very difficult for me. It's like fucking Sophie's Choice, man. But only one can win out here. And watching these movies again pretty much clinched it for me. It's still hard, but here's where I ultimately landed. Look, I don't care if you hate The Last Jedi. If you do not like the movie, that is entirely your right, and I will respect your opinion as long as you respect mine. Please do not flood my inbox with bullshit about how I'm wrong and how I'm a fake Star Wars fan, because you'd only be proving the point I made at the start of the video. Let's be calm and civilized about this shit, shall we? This was honestly the reason I didn't want to rank these films, because I knew this film would probably be in the top spot, and it almost was. I will explain why in a few, but let's talk about why I personally love this movie to death. And there's a lot to discuss, so buckle up and order a pizza. This might take a while. In terms of filmmaking and themes, I think The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars film ever made. In terms of those two elements, it's not even a contest to me. The action and visuals are mind-blowing. The whole Praetorian Guard fight is one of my favorite fight scenes in the entire series, rivaled only by Anakin fighting Obi-Wan and Duel of the Fates. I think Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver give their best performances as Rey and Kylo Ren within this film. Again, I didn't like Kylo Ren in Force Awakens. I loved him in this. I really liked how everything played out with Kylo killing Snoke, who was played perfectly by Andy Serkis, by the way, having us think he'd turn back to the light, like Vader did, but ultimately choosing to be the new big bad of the series and forge his own path. I love Rey's story in this film, especially her scenes with Luke. And I love her outcome, revealing that she doesn't have some dark lineage, but is simply just someone who is Force sensitive. She comes from nothing. And I love how the film says you can achieve great things even if you come from nothing. You don't need to come from some important bloodline to achieve great things. Rey was not defined by lineage or her origins, which gave Disney a perfect blank canvas to work with in a sequel with endless possibilities. Yeah, fuck you, J.J. Abrams. Everyone complains about the cancel bite sequence and calls it pointless. I'd argue it's downright indispensable because of the ending and the very theme of hope the movie is implementing. Ultimately, the Codebreaker subplot is just another subplot, but it's the journey of it that makes it work. Rose and Finn get assistance from child slaves, who they inspire by showing them the Resistance Ring, instilling in them that these people hold on to the same hope they do. And when Luke makes his sacrifice in the end, we see the same slave children reenacting the final battle of the film with toys, which shows us that Luke's legacy of hope has once again spread throughout the galaxy. This is only strengthened as we see one of the children use the Force to grab a broom, tilt it up like a lightsaber, and look at the stars. I'm sorry, from a thematic standpoint, this is expertly handled. I also love how the Canto Bight sequence shows us how the wars fought by the main characters affect everyone else in the galaxy, and also shows the greedy bastards who profit from it. There's a focus on the little people affected by these wars, which is why Rose's character is so damn important. Speaking of which, Rose, fucking love her. I love her attitude. I love how Kelly Marie Tran plays her. I love how she appears as a normal person instead of a damn supermodel. And I love her personal stakes in the story, as we see her sister killed in the beginning, and goes to sometimes crazy lengths to make sure the same fate doesn't befall Finn. I liked how she clearly developed feelings for Finn, but what was so refreshing was that Finn didn't necessarily reciprocate them. In the end, she kisses him, but he doesn't kiss her back. Rian Johnson sowed the seeds of a potential romance that could have easily been developed further in a sequel. Fuck you! A lot of people complain about DJ. Again, loved DJ. He is a character who makes it very clear from the get-go that he is not on any side, and he makes a good argument for that. He points out how the war is all one big machine, funded by the same people, so why does he give a shit which side he's on? As he says in the film, it's all a machine, partner. Live free, don't join. Poe's arc in the film is also great, as he learns to be more of a leader instead of a hero. His hot-headed nature ended up getting a lot of people killed, and it was good to see him taken down a notch as a result. He learns to use more of his brain and less of his ego. Poe was enjoyable in Force Awakens, but this is where he truly became a well-developed character. And no, Holdo is not woke. She's not a feminist. Please stop with that shit. Well, why didn't you just tell Poe her plan? Why would you, an officer, tell a pilot who was just demoted for getting an entire bomber fleet killed your plan? Maybe it's because, just going by his hot-headed nature, she knew he'd act like this.
You are. All of them? We're abandoning ship? Is that's what you got? That's what you brought us to? Howard! Those transport ships are unarmed, unshielded. We abandon this cruiser, we're done. We don't stand a chance. No, you are not just a coward, you are a traitor.
Get this man off my bridge.
Yeah, that's fucking why. By the way, on a side note, say what you will about Holdo, This scene was fucking awesome. I love Luke's journey in the film. Mark Hamill has never been this good playing this character. In fact, it's probably the best performance I've ever seen from Mark Hamill, and one of my favorite performances in any of these films. I love how the film asks the question, what if the most hopeful man in the galaxy lost his hope? The galaxy itself will start to lose hope. We see this throughout the film as characters are put into a state of hopelessness, trying to keep the spark of it alive, only to have their hope ignited when Luke shows up to inspire everyone once again. The lesson he receives from Yoda about failure being the greatest teacher is why this film had the biggest impact on me. When this movie came out, I was fresh out of college, had no luck finding a job in my field, could barely make my rent or my car payments, was about to be homeless, and was on the verge of saying screw it and walking right into traffic. I'm dead serious. And it's not an easy thing for me to admit. I felt like such a failure. And it was this movie, its message, and Luke's journey in the film that helped me get out of the funk that I was in. Now I have 2 kids, a beautiful fiance, and a good job, and while getting there was definitely a struggle, it was worth it. So I have a lot to thank this movie for, and I was not expecting a Star Wars movie to have such a positive impact on me. So that being said, why isn't this at number 1 then? If it means that much to me, shouldn't it be at 1? Every time I queue up The Last Jedi, yeah, I still get all the things that I love about it that I just mentioned, but I can no longer watch this movie without the knowledge that everything I fucking love about it is completely fucked over in the next one. This goddamn turd ruined everything. That is why I hate The Rise of Skywalker on such a personal level. Its mere existence is the reason I can't place this as my favorite Star Wars film. Because I can't watch it without thinking of that! And that's ultimately what it came to. I'm always in a good mood after watching the film at number 1. When I watch this, I'm in a good mood. Hell, I'm even moved and uplifted throughout the runtime. But then the credits hit and I realized that none of it matters anymore. J.J. Abrams ruined everything with this garbage. This garbage tainted this masterpiece. It is a damn shame, folks. If there's ever a day I can get over that, I may switch these up again, but as of now, Last Jedi remains at number 2. As I've stated, I don't think there is one Star Wars movie I have watched more than this film. Whenever I get the bug to pop in a Star Wars movie, whenever I get in that Star Wars mood, Revenge of the Sith is usually the one I watch. Like 9 times out of 10, I'll always pick it. Even when my son told me he wanted to watch a Star Wars movie, like an idiot, I went and put in Revenge of the Sith, not realizing he hadn't even seen the other ones yet. So yeah, I will rarely pick a Star Wars movie to watch over this one. Even Last Jedi. I may love it, but I'll always watch this one first. I loved finally seeing how Anakin was seduced to the dark side. His love for Padme and his need to save her ultimately became his downfall, which is in perfect contrast to Return of the Jedi, where his love for his son and his need to save him is ultimately what brought him back. George Lucas made it very clear that the stories were like poetry and rhyme with each other, and it is perfectly evident in both the visuals and the storytelling. I loved seeing how Palpatine ultimately drove Anakin to the dark side, and how Anakin and Obi-Wan's brotherhood slowly unraveled by the end. Watching them fight was pretty badass and also very heartbreaking. Once again, Anakin is seen as being whiny here. I said I'd discuss it later in the video, so here it is. Anakin, from the time Qui-Gon plucked him from Tatooine and pawned him off to Obi-Wan, was built up as a friggin' messiah. As the one who would bring balance to the Force. But if you watch these movies, no one treats him like that. No one respects him or really gives him fuck all to do. The Jedi gave him a fucking messiah complex, but didn't follow through with that in his training. Yeah, that mix of pressure and confusion would make anyone pissed. Hell, I'd be pissed. If you told me tomorrow that the fate of humanity rested on me and I said, okay, what can I do to help? And your answer to me was,
take a seat, young Skywalker.
Yeah, I'd be telling you to eat some shit. So no, I completely understand why he's pissed off all the time. It makes total sense within the story's context. The real problem with Anakin was addressed back in Phantom Menace. He was too old and had already experienced attachment. In his Jedi training, he looked for a father and wanted that in Obi-Wan after becoming his apprentice. But if you look at their relationship, he never treats Anakin like a son. He treats him like his little brother. Qui-Gon was the father figure Anakin needed. It's why the fight where he dies in Phantom Menace is called Duel of the Fates. The duel literally decides the fate of Anakin. Had Qui-Gon lived, he would have filled that father role. But he didn't, so when Anakin couldn't get that father out of Obi-Wan, where did he go? He went to the only person who was championing him for years and calling him the most gifted Jedi he'd ever met. Palpatine. The reason I'm going on this slight tangent is for the people who bring this, and especially Attack of the Clones, down as bad storytelling and too simplistic. I'm sorry, from where I'm standing, this storytelling is fucking genius, and the farthest thing from simplistic, when you actually dig a little deeper, and look at the stories as a whole. And the reason Revenge is my favorite of the prequels is because it was the one that paid off everything. Revenge of the Sith is filled with amazing visuals, outstanding effects, and some of the most memorable lines and character moments of the entire series. The lightsaber fights and space battles are beautifully crafted and choreographed. The score by John Williams, as always, just fucking owns. While I can concede Revenge of the Sith is not George Lucas's best written film, it's by far his best directed film. Yes, it has clunky dialogue, but so does every Star Wars film in existence. Yes, it has some wooden acting. Again, so does every Star Wars film in existence. These are not new developments for Star Wars, guys. To me, this was the film with the best payoff, the most emotional stakes, the most heartbreaking scenes. Fuck, I'm still traumatized by Order 66, and I'm just gonna say it. The best villain of the entire series in Palpatine. Here's where his plan is put into motion. Him playing everyone like a damn fiddle has finally paid off, and he becomes the Galactic Emperor. For all intents and purposes, he wins. He defeats Yoda, orders the clones to wipe out the Jedi against their will, and gains his new apprentice. The villain literally got everything he wanted and took over. Yes, I love Darth Vader too, but let's be fair, he only defeated the Emperor in Return of the Jedi because the Emperor let his guard down. And even then, the Emperor mortally wounded him with the Force lightning, so he took Vader with him. I'm sorry, when it comes to Star Wars villains, Palpatine is the fucking GOAT. Oh, wait. This still exists. Okay, my bad, folks. I take it back. You're back on top, Vader. Sorry, pal, so close.
It's treason, then.
Okay, joking aside, love Ian McTurban in this movie. He's awesome, and Palps is awesome. In terms of writing, you could definitely make an argument that the last 3 films in this list are better films. That being said, I don't think I would watch any of them over this one. It's kind of like my argument for Wonder Woman and Man of Steel. I think Wonder Woman is a better movie in almost every way, but I will almost certainly watch Man of Steel over Wonder Woman every time. This is why Man of Steel always wins out in my DCU rankings, and why Revenge of the Sith is ultimately winning out here. So that being said, folks, there it is. There's my ranking of the Star Wars films. How would you rank these films? Please let me know in the comments, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more.